So, again, my name is Cody Meyer. I grew up here in Northern California. I grew up in Grass Valley. And when I was 5 years old, I can remember watching TV, watching Bassmasters, watching Larry Nixon, guys I get to fish against today, and going, man, that looks cool. I want to be a bass fisherman when I grow up. And when I was 15 years old, my mom and dad, my dad had this old boat, this John boat, and my mom would actually drive me to Orville into Collins Lake, and a couple times here at Folsom, back me in at dark, drop me off, and I would fish all day. She'd just leave me, come back, and pick me up at night. You know, now in the state of California, if you did that, you go to jail for childhood abandonment. But that's how I got started. I fished my first tournament at Orville. I was 15 years old the same year. I actually won the tournament. I caught like a 16-pound bag. I can't do it again, so I don't know what happened, but I was hooked. And this is just a wonderful sport of bass fishing, and I try to get everyone in it because I want it to grow. I want it to be something big one day where, you know, you turn it on and go, you know, like football or something, where it's a big sport because it's a lot of fun. And I love to do everything. I love, you know, I've been kind of pigeonholed as a finesse fisherman the last couple of years, and I definitely am. I love the finesse fish, but I also like to flip. I like to, you know, throw big swim baits. I like to do it all, you know, throw Alabama rig when it's called for. But what I want to talk today about to you guys is some of the techniques that are going to help you here on Folsom, Comanche, Orville, some of these reservoir lakes, and are going to get a couple more bites when the bite's tough. So ask plenty of questions, whatever you guys want to know. I'm going to give you some really good secrets today that normally I wouldn't share. So anyways, the first thing is, who here has done the braid to fluorocarbon? Like on a spinning rod, you have the braid to fluorocarbon. Quite a few guys. Cool. So the benefits of this, that for you guys who haven't done it, there's so many pros and very little cons. You know, one thing, now you can afford to buy some of this good line, like this Gamma line down here, the good fluorocarbon. I feel like good fluorocarbon is a huge thing in getting more bites. You know, good fluorocarbon, you know, you could see better, or you can't see as good. The fish aren't going to be able to see it, and it just performs a lot better. Also, you know, you can spend more money on it because this braid, when you put it on your spinning reel, I've literally had the same braid on my reels all year. So it's, you know, it's going to be good. You can put it on there and keep fishing it. Now, a lot of people say to me, they go, well, what knot do you tie? Because that's kind of a scary thing, having your line go down and having a knot and then another knot where the fish is biting. And that's really important. I like to tie, it's called the Alberto knot. There's a couple different ways to tie it. This is my favorite one. A buddy of mine showed me this, who was Dean there at High's Tackle Box, who was into tuna fishing. He could catch 300-pound tuna on little fluorocarbon with going from braid to fluoro. And what I like to do, there's, like I said, this is one of the knots I like to tie. It's going to be better than like the uni to uni because it's actually going to hide the fluorocarbon underneath the braid. So every time you make a cast, it's not going to be hitting your eyes. So this is going to be your fluorocarbon. I'll go pretty slow. This is the way I like to tie it. This is going to be your braid. You're going to start here. You're always going to come from the top. And once you get this loop, you don't want to move it. You don't want to let this thing go. So you're going to kind of pinch it down, go like this. I like to come down. It's hard to tie with this, but I'm going to do 2 loops. Okay, just like that. Now I'm going to hold it, get a little bit more, and I'm going to come back 5 or 6 times. Okay, and now the general rule of thumb I like to use, when I come all the way back, I'm going to go through from the bottom and come up. You're going to wet it down, you're going to cinch it. Now, general rule of thumb, if you're using like a 6-pound test line, I like to do 10 wraps. And if you're doing something like 30 pounds or bigger, I like to do 8. And you can see very little fluorocarbon is going to be shown in there. You're going to catch a lot more fish. You're not going to break them off. You're going to save a ton of money, and you're going to have better line. You're going to catch more. So that's the first thing I like to do. I'll start talking about some of the ways I like to drop shot. I'm a huge drop shotter. It works in every lake here, I promise you. People always say, well, you know, you drop shot, you have a fairy wand in your hand, that's sissy fishing. But I've caught more 10-pounders on a drop shot than any swim bait, any top water, anything out there, just because it's a real natural technique. first thing, you know, there's a ton of different weights out there. We got tungsten, we got lead. You know, it's what you can afford, it's what you prefer. But I want to talk about the size, the shape of the weight. There's 3 different weights that I know of. There's a teardrop shape, which is in between a ball weight and a cylinder weight. There's the ball weight, and then there's cylinder. Now, the ball weight is what you're going to want to use if you want to drag that drop shot. Like you're casting out here at Folsom and you're fishing and you're just going to drag it real slow to try to really make bottom contact. The cylinder weight is going to be for current and for grass. It's going to go through current a lot better. You're going to snag less. And grass, it goes through grass really good. 90% of the time, I'm going to use a teardrop just because it's a combination of both and it fishes really good. One thing I like to do with the drop shot, whether I'm nose hooking a bait or what I'm going to show you here for fishing a little bit heavier cover, is I tie a Palomar knot. This is going to be your leader. After I tie the Palomar, I want to make sure, you know, get it wet, tighten it down. You always want to cinch down from your leader side. I'm going to take the leader and I'm going to drop it back through the eye of the hook. That's going to do a couple things. It's going to make it perfectly stand up straight every single time. It's not going to roll over. You're not going to hook them on the tongue, kill the fish, lose a penalty, and the next guy's going to beat you. And then it's also going to hide that knot inside the eye of the hook, so you're not going to break off as many. So this is what I like to call the Bubba drop shot. And this is with braid. I don't ever throw it braid. I just want to show it so you can see it. So I'm going to tie my basic drop shot. You know, this is a great way to catch them at Clear Lake and the Delta. This is a great way. I can't tell you how many times I've gone behind guys, you know, flipping a big jig or something like that, or flipping a beaver, and you go behind them with the drop shot and you can clean up all those fish they missed. And, you know, you could throw this on a bait caster with this setup. This is a RoboWorm rebarb hook. It's a 2-aught, so you can pull them out of some cover, you can flip it in cover, or it's great for brush piles, or like say Folsom's up high and you can flip this right in the willows. You know, some of those big fish you see in the willows, this is a way to catch them. Now what I like to do, the rebarb hook is key when you Texas rig a drop shot. It's the same as you're going to Texas rig a normal bait. You're just going to come through here, through the eye of the hook. It's not too complicated. You're going to pull it out, and this is just a straight shank hook, but it's got this little keeper on there. It's going to hold the worm real good, and then you completely make it weedless. So that's one of the ways I love to throw a drop shot, and that's going to be crucial when you're fishing around cover. And don't be afraid to throw this, you know, where you normally would never throw a drop shot because it's going to be an open hook. You're going to get a ton of bites. The next thing with the drop shot, this is the most common way, and most of you guys are very familiar with this. I'll show you a couple tricks that are going to help you catch more fish with it. This is the nose hook. One thing I like to do, this is the number 4 owner mosquito hook. I personally believe that the smaller the hook, the better you are at landing the fish and the more bites you're going to get.
Amen.
Yes.
I will attest to that hook.
It is.
That's the only one I use.
Yep.
That's it.
And
it works.
Guys will get a big old 1-aught, 2-aught, and go, there's no way you can land a fish with that small of a hook because they think a 1-aught small. The small, like again, the smaller the better. I've literally dropped down next to guys, throwing the same line, the same bait, and got way more bites on a smaller hook. And one thing to think about when you're finesse fishing with something like this, you're not just reefing on them, you're not hooking the fish in the bone, you're what we call skin hooking them, which I'm sure you guys are familiar. You're kind of just hooking the skin, you're keeping pressure, and you're bringing them in. A couple things I like to do. A couple years ago I was at Lake Lanier. You know, your typical setup, you're just going to hook it right through the nose, just like that. It's going to have a lot of action. You're going to get more bites like that. But I'm fishing, and I'm fishing around some structure. So I went to the Texas rig, like I just showed you guys, and I wasn't getting bit because they were only keen on this little bait. Ended up almost winning the Forest Wood Cup, almost won $1 million. And what I was doing is I was taking this, and this works great for if you're fishing around rock piles and stuff like this here too. You can make this thing weedless as well with the nose hook. And the nose hook, you're going to get more bites, again, just because it's going to be more finesse, going to have a lot more action on the worm. What you want to do is you want to go on the bait about a 1/4 of an inch back and pull it just like that and come out, and this thing now, you can see that the tip of this thing's not exposed. You're going to be able to bring it through cover. The only downfall is you catch a fish, most of the time it's going to throw your worm, but you got to get bit first. Who cares, right? So that's another way. This is a great way to catch them when it's tough. Another thing I love to do is everyone in here, I mean, you guys know how these lakes get fish suspend in these lakes. And a couple things I love to do is I'm a huge electronic guy. I love to find fish on my electronics, idling around. I've spent hours and hours. I love the video game fish. I don't want to confuse you, but that's where you're looking at your worm and your weight drop down. You can see the fish come up. That works really good for some suspended fish. But thing I love to do, and by far I've caught more big spots doing this than anything. I've caught a ton of 8-pounders. I used to live up at Shasta. And it's what I call swimming the drop shot. Same setup. You're going to have a, whatever rod you prefer. I like a 7-foot, 7-foot 2-inch medium, light rod. You're going to have your nose hook set up. You're going to, number 4 hook, small bait of your choice. Leader is going to be 18 inches. But I'm going to downsize my weight. I'm not going to fish this thing on the bottom. I'm going to maybe go to like a 1/8 ounce weight, okay, instead of a 1/4 ounce. I'm going to throw it out there. Let's say just anywhere you think there's a big fish, whether it's a big willow tree right there, and you can see those big spots sitting under there. You throw this by, you let it sink down a little bit, you just click the bail. And you keep tension on your rod. So you're going to slowly reel, and you're just going to pull it. And you're going to let it swing through the water column, and that catches some giant fish. I mean, whether at Comanche, I guarantee you I could go down to Comanche. I haven't been there in 10 years, and as soon as I found out where the fish were out in the graph, I could swim it through there and just clean house. I mean, again, this is a way to catch some giant fish. So pendulum swinging through.
When you pendulum that bait, is there a certain worm or do you like a little paddle tail, or do you like a curl tail or a straight tail, or do you just go through the gamut of baits till you figure out what they want?
90% of the time, and it's a sponsor of mine. I'm not just trying to pump the sponsor, but I throw the crosstail shadow.
That's a great bait.
Jackal crosstail shadow. And again, so you're going to throw it out there, hits the water, and you're just going to click it and just kind of hold your rod, and you're going to reel it and just let it swing through. This works great on bridge pilings. If you don't know, you can always go to like a bridge piling or something and throw it up there and guarantee you're going to get bit. Or again, those big fish. I've done this at Clear Lake. I caught a 10-pounder at Clear Lake, and everyone's throwing Cincos. These fish have seen a million Cincos. And when you get out there and you see all these fish under docks, and you're throwing Cincos, and one out of every 5 docks one eats, or 10 docks. I went and I saw this really big bass and threw it up there and pendulum swing, just slowly swam it through, and it's really naturally come through and caught a 10-pounder. It works there too. So it's a great way. This is another way I like to fish a drop shot. Another thing, suspended fish. I'll tell you about suspended fish because these lakes are notorious for it. And if you can catch some of the suspended fish, generally you're going to have a bigger bag. Fish are going to suspend because of pressure, because they're inactive. And I firmly believe a lot of those big fish in these lakes out here, especially with how clear it is, they spend most of their life roaming around. They're not hunkered to the bottom. And so it's a key to try to find them to have bigger bags. I know everyone wants to take home that trophy here. Anyways, this flick shake is another thing. I've been throwing this for years. Again, this is a jackal worm. It's a sponsor of mine. I'm not, going to try to sell you guys on the sponsor baits. It's just that good, and I've caught a ton of fish on it. Very simple way to fish it. You can fish it like a Cinco, throw it out there, eat a sandwich, pick up your line, catch a fish. Couple ways I like to rig it. It comes with this. It doesn't come. You buy this wacky jig head. It's a tungsten jig head. You can make your own as well. Most people will just grab it on there and rig it. There's actually a key to rigging this bait. This bait was made off of a Berkeley worm. How many times do you grab a worm that's been sitting in your garage for 5 years and it's bent and you throw it away? Well, this worm was designed off that. A guy in Japan had this worm that was all bent, and he said, I'm going to throw it on there, and threw it out there, and it shook, and that's it. So the head is going to be bent a certain way, and the tail is bent a certain way. You actually want to rig it where this head is bent down, and you come right from the bottom, and you rig it just like that, right up through the middle. So this thing's on the bottom. That way when it falls, it's going to catch more water. It's going to shake a lot more. It's going to be great.
So are you rigging it through the egg sac?
Rigging it right through the middle of the egg sac, yep. And this is a thing where Works year round. You know, there's no wrong way to fish it. Throw it out there on the bottom, shake it around. You can drag it, or you can just throw it out there and fish it weightless like you would a Senko. Now,
I got a question, Cody.
Sure. Yeah.
So, I've done really well with the flick shake, but more so at Clear Lake, Delta, Amador for largemouth. Spotted bass eat it a little bit, but not near as much. Is it the size of the worm? Is it you found anything?
Spotted bass typically eat it, seems like, better around vertical structure. Like if you're fishing up a finger, there's a vertical wall where they're going to kind of suspend. It seems better like that, or like a tree, or you're fishing around docks and stuff like that. Do a little bit better. One thing is very important with the flick shake: you do not want to set the hook or anything really wacky rig fishing like this. It's better, instead of giving it a snap, a hook set, you want to feel that bite, you want to reel down, and you just kind of want to reel set. For those who don't know the reel set, all it is you're kind of just pulling into them and you're reeling really fast. And you're going to skin hook them, you're going to catch a lot more fish. So how many times have you guys gone out there? I know this lake's notorious for it because Shasta is, Orville is, everywhere with spotted bass. You get a bite, you set the hook, and your worm's bit in half. That ever happen to anybody? All the time, right? So years ago, I was talking to a Japanese friend of mine, shooting for Kai, and I saw something really cool on his boat. I thought, wow, what is that? Does that actually work? And he said, yeah. And all he was doing, this works with a drop shot, any way you want, any bait you want to do, really, any plastic. So where the hook comes out on this bait, this is an orange marker. I prefer a chartreuse, but you're going to take that chartreuse marker out, and let's say I'm hooking this flick shake right here in the middle. I'm going to take it, I'm just going to chartreuse it right where the hook's going through. Little things like that, and it could be, again, with this rub worm. Okay, the hook's poking out right here. I'm going to put a chartreuse band right around where that hook's popping out, and 99% of the time, you will hook that fish, you'll never lose them, because they will target in on that little chartreuse piece, and they'll bite it. And I promise you, especially for fishing around here in these spots, because a lot of those spots that bite it in half, they're really big spots. I mean, I've seen them at this lake Whiskey Town up there, throwing it out there and had a bite, and set, miss, and got all their littles. And started doing that, and they're 5-6 pounders, or big ones. So just something like that, that's a huge key to get some of those bites when they're short striking. Another thing, you know, I'm not going to talk a whole bunch about it. A couple keys with the jig. No matter where you go in the country, there's crawdads. Jig's something I always have tied on the deck, and I throw in practice or a tournament. There's a variety of jigs out there. You know, they're all good. It just depends on what you like. A couple things I do like to do. This time of the year on these reservoirs, I always prefer a living rubber football jig. I don't like the silicone. This is a silicone, I'm just showing you. But the living rubber is better. It has a lot more action. This time of the year especially, I will take the jig and, you know, take it out of the package. You can throw it out there and it's going to be fine. But if you turn it upside down, just little tricks like this will get you more bites. Turn it upside down, take your scissors and cut it upside down. And as weird as that sounds, when you flop it over, it's going to puff out a lot more. And when the water's cold, it's going to get you a lot more bites. Now back to a jig, you know, that's going to be what I do from now, you know, from November to February. Now in March, I'm going to maybe go to a silicone jig then. Still probably the living rubber if I'm fishing around here, but I'm going to thin it out a little bit. You want to have that jig kind of moving a little bit faster. Summertime, that's when I'm going to go strictly to a hula grub. And the fall, same thing. And then, you know, November, that's when I'm going to do that. So just something to think about. Also, not to confuse you guys, but again, the chartreuse marker, if you chartreuse some of these little pinchers, I fished a ton with a guy that used to win everything at Orville, and that was like his secret. Spots, largemouth, smallmouth cannot resist it. You know, whether it's just something they key on or that crawdads actually have chartreuse in their pinchers, I don't know. But I'll always take this and I'll just mark the pinchers real quick, and that'll get you a couple more bites for sure. I promise you that. So that's a couple things. Again, the jig is a must-have. Who here has heard about, well, let me talk about this real quick first. So again, I always throw the jig. There is some days though when they don't bite the jig. Maybe it's high pressure came through, it's sunny, and that's when you're going to switch to something like a tube. And going back to that jig, a lot of times most people are going to drag it. You know, you just throw it out there and you're dragging it, feeling the rock piles. A lot of times, what I like to do with the jig and with this tube, what I'm going to show you, is you can actually make a fish react to a jig like a reaction bait. And it sounds crazy. You know, most of the time, like say you're dragging it for 5 miles and you have 800 feet of line out there, and the fish is going to pull up and look at that jig and it's going to follow it, and it has no hurry about eating it. It can be thinking about it and going, oh, I'll chase it for another half mile if I want. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll be dragging it and just snap it real hard. Just whack, snap it, and you'll draw a reaction bite a lot of times. If there's a fish following it, it's no different than throwing a jerk bait when you pop it or a top water. You get that fish to react. You can just go along and snap it, and then before that thing hits the bottom, they'll bite it. So something to keep in mind. They'll get you a few more bites. And again, I'm the type of guy, the more bites you can get, the better chance you have at winning a tournament, at cashing a check. Yes.
How do you feel about scents?
Huge believer in scent. In fact, I rarely fish a tournament with, if I'm fishing a plastic bait, everything I throw will have a scent on it. One key to me is, believe it or not, with the drop shot, there's a stuff, and I never say this, but JJ's Magic. It's called JJ's Magic. You can get it at Tackle Warehouse, highest tackle box shop. They make a clear tube of garlic, and I'll take like a bag of Cinco's, anything, and I'll pour it in there. Doesn't change the color, but it gives it so much scent, and it's a huge factor. You'll get a lot more bites doing it. The other ones I like on a jig tube is smelly jelly. That's not many people throw it a lot more. It seems to last on the bait a little bit more. I've always noticed a difference. As soon as I reapply it, it seems like I get a bit. So that's big. But this tube, again, this is kind of, everyone thinks of a tube as smallmouth. Throw a smallmouth for a tube. It's great here. I've won probably more money on a tube fishing for spotted bass in tournament situations than any other bait. And it's just killer. A couple things I like to do. We don't have scissors. I like to rig it either with a ball head, okay, or a dart head. And like I said, don't want to confuse you guys, but there is certain times. I fished a TV show, you brought it up earlier, with Jared Edwards years ago on Trinity Lake. And we go out there, and I was throwing a tube, and I started crushing them. I mean, 4 or 5 pound largemouth, 4 or 5 pound smallmouth. I caught a 7 pounder that day. And Jared never caught one on a tube. And I'm throwing it behind him. And he said, what is the deal? We're throwing the same Dry Creek tube. That's all I throw is a Dry Creek. Yeah, that's a good one. Whoever said that. And it was just the fault. He was actually throwing a tube inside her head, and when you throw it out, they kind of spiral down. They weren't biting it. And I'm throwing the ball head, and the ball head will give this thing just a straight downfall. Okay? And just that little difference, I'm a huge guy in little key subtleties and stuff. That little difference got me 50 bites, and I'm not kidding, he never caught a fish until he finally put the bait on. Another one, that's small.
The jig's inside of the tube?
Yep. And this is how I like to do it. Generally, again, you're going to get cancer if you lick this in California, but I'll take some scissors, I'll go inside the tube. This is a 3.5 inch tube. I'll cut maybe 1/2 inch at the most. I'm just going to kind of rip it. But I'll pre-rig the tubes like the night before a tournament. I'll cut it with scissors. This is a great way. You take the smelly jelly, you open up the cap, you dip this head right in the smelly jelly, and then it'll slide up there super easy. It's going to go in a lot easier. You're not going to fight it. Plus, you're going to have scent. So I lick the thing. I'm going to die soon. Just to get it in there, and the smelly jelly will go in there a lot easier. And then here we go. So this is, I don't really like throwing a tube when it's on the outside, like if a Texas rig. It just doesn't look right. So that's the way I'm going to throw it, just like that. It's really compact. It's low profile, and it's going to get a ton of bites. This is like really a finesse jig for these lakes.
So why do you cut that again so the hook goes up further?
Yep, I like, again, I'm a huge believer in smaller hooks. That's just a 1/0 hook. light wire. I never get a heavy wire hook. I always believe in the light just for the skin hooking part. But I cut it just so the hook will fit in there a little bit better. I'll show you that there. And it's a dynamite way. I know this tournament here, you guys could go to Comanche, you go to a rock pile and throw a jig and catch a couple fish. Clean up with the tube and you'll catch a lot more.
I want to see this.
Do you prefer a 90 degree over a 60 degree head?
I do. Yep. I do prefer 90 degree on that. Typically on a jig, I really like a 60 just because it snags less, but that eye barely just sticks out with the 90, and it seems like it performs really well. But again, you put the smelly jelly in there, that's going to be a killer bait. Having it too. So, other than that, I want to show you guys something probably you've heard about from Tennessee. I have a buddy who would kill me if I told you this, but really good friend of mine, Glenn Lockhart. I don't know if you guys have heard of him.
Yeah.
A little bit. But I grew up fishing with Glenn, and we've been throwing this for years, not saying a single word about it. And he won last year. I always thought this was a wintertime thing, but he won last year in May. He had 25 pounds out here, 5 spotted bass. And then the next week, in June, he had like 23 pounds, won both tournaments. And it's on the float and fly. Have you guys ever seen this? You guys ever heard about it? You guys ever thrown it?
Yeah,
This is
Do you have a
kill.
rod length limit? I've always been wondering because I do have a
I
10
had went out with another guy, and he slayed them.
Do you,
Yeah.
do you use a steel head rod when you throw it?
So the rod I use, I have a custom-made 8-footer just because in my tournaments, can't have over 8-foot rod.
I got a 10 footer in the garage.
Yeah, this is a deadly technique. I have a good friend, his name is Ryan Friend, lives in Orville. He wins everything. It pisses me off because I cannot beat him if you don't throw this. And he told me, he said, Cody, I won't always land them. But now we're talking Orville. We're not talking Folsom. Orville, a 4-pounder is a really big spotted bass. And he'll go out there and he said, I don't always land them every day, but every single day, if I throw it all day, I will get at least 1 4-pound bite this time of the year. So you can see how hard it is to beat. And if it's a good day, he gets 3 4-pound bites. And basic setup is you're going to have a bobber. It's like fishing a live minnow. You're watching your bobber. It's like you're a kid again. It's a blast. A couple of key things. There's this is a thill, and I get mine at HeisTackleBoxShop.com. They come with this little chartreuse leader. You know, you can use like a rubber bobber stop like you're actually, you know, used for flipping or something, because no one fishes a bobber anymore. But that chartreuse leader is going to do a couple things. You're going to put that on your line first. You're going to cinch it down, cut the tack ends. Then you're going to put your bobber on. Then you're going to put your fly. So when you cast it, it's going to be really compact. You're going to have your fly touching the bobber, and your bobber stop's going to be up in your reel. You're going to be able to throw it a mile. You know, you used to have to like fly fish these things. But this way, you can throw it a long ways. Plus, you can adjust without crimping your line the leader size of where your fly is going to go. So once you cast out there, the chartreuse thing, the leader is really important because you're watching that leader, and it's a strike indicator. So a lot of times those things will eat it right when it's falling down, and you can tell. If not, the thill is very important because it sits in the water like this when the bait's falling down, and then when it stops, it'll tip up, right? A lot of times this thing's so small and such a low profile, they'll come up and they'll bite this thing. You know, the flies will be sitting like this, the bobber like this. They'll bite it, and the bobber will just tip sideways. You're not actually waiting for it to suck down. They'll just tip sideways, and that's a big old spot that just came up and grabbed it, and fish on. It's unbelievable. I never thought in a million years this little fly would get so many big spotted bass bites.
So you got the Spro there, right?
Yes, the
Do you
Spro.
fish the Persuader?
I have not.
Do you care? I mean,
I've always just kind of thrown the Spro just because the hook in there. It's a little Gamakatsu.
I know some of the guys back east in Tennessee are big on like duck feathers.
Duck feather, yeah. This Persuader ones. I've seen those. I've never thrown it, but I'm telling you, it is. Like I said, I always thought it was a cold water thing, but last year Glenn was like laughing, going, "No, that's what I'm doing." You guys do
what
know?
length leader?
Depends. That all depends on where you see the fish. You know, the guys at Orville, they have 4 or 5 different rods. They got one with 8 foot, 12 foot, 15, 25, 30. Yeah. Bullard's bar. You want to catch a 30-pound bag, it's almost guaranteed because I've done it 1,000 times. You can, as soon as you find them, you know, as soon as you see them down there, like say 30 feet, you throw it out. It's a patience game. You sit there, you can throw that cast out for 20 minutes, and all of a sudden, ding, you get a giant spotted bass. So something to keep in mind.
Can you pass that fly rod?
Sure, yeah.
What size rod do you gotta throw on?
I have to throw it on an 8-foot rod. Also, 4-pound test is must on fly. Throwing a float fly.
Wow.
So
They're freaking odds.
it's a game on deal. But killer thing.
Yeah, that is.
Another thing is, again, I don't want to
Do you
just
dead stick that bait? I mean, you throw it out there and it's doing its thing, it's falling, and it hits.
Yeah.
Whatever level. You
Yep.
just let it sit there?
you do. So the ways you fish it really,
And you're throwing it in wind, so it's moving.
wind is better. A
Yeah.
lot of wind isn't good, but when it's a little choppy, it'll kind of do its thing. If it's slick calm, you can throw it out there, and you can pop your bobber a little bit, just
Gotcha.
ting, ting. And then you'll see the bobber, and it'll float back down and sit a little bit. Ting, ting. But mostly dead stick.
Are they pretty well hooked? I mean,
They're hooked pretty good.
so they're swallowing the bait.
Yeah.
Once you see that bottom moving around, they've got it.
They got it. You'll miss a lot too,
I'm
believe it or
sure.
not. It's pretty weird.
Yeah, that's true.
So you're 50 foot of water and
Yes.
you don't know if there's fish there or not. You rig this thing to be at 50 foot, or you rig it to 30, or you rig it.
So what you'll do is, what I always do is turn on my electronics. Steeper structure seems better for the fly, and you'll look down and you'll go, huh, okay, they're 20 feet down. And then that's going to determine your length. It's wherever you see them, you know, and it's a suspended deal. So if it's 50 feet, but you're marking them down 12 feet, or you're marking bait 12 feet below the boat, that's how you're going to adjust it.
Just for suspended fish.
Suspended fish only, yeah. And it works great too when pre-spawn, those big fish move up, and you throw a jerk bait. They've seen 1,000 of them. They don't want to bite it. They bite that little thing. Unbelievable. But something to try for sure. This thing is this is just a regular jerk bait. I want to talk, you know, not about a jerk bait, but just this works with, you know, whatever jerk bait you're throwing. You know, a lot of them, when you pull them out of the package, they will slowly float. You guys notice that? They'll kind of slowly come up. I think that's terrible when you're fishing a jerkbait. I'll never throw one that comes up, slowly floats. I'm a firm believer they have to completely suspend or they have to slowly sink. And most of the time my baits are slowly sinking. Because when they come up, you just don't get as many bites. Couple things you can do that are really, really, really simple. So you'll have you can upgrade your hooks. Like this is a bait I put number 4 treble hooks on compared to they're probably number 6s. That will get that thing to slowly sink. I never put suspend dots on. A lot of these baits, when you pop them, the bait will have roll to it. Okay, and when you put suspend dots on, it'll kind of make that bait stiff. It won't do its natural thing, how they're designed. So never put suspend dots. I know guys do, and it works for them, but I just catch more without it. And another thing, if you guys are putting hooks on and it's still not sinking, or you want to go down a little faster, this is a trick I learned from being back on tour. You could take just another split ring. You could take it off an old bait, take it out of a new package, and just add another split ring on back behind this split ring and the hook. So you're going to just add it right there, and that will drop that thing down a little bit. And just simple things like that are going to get you more bites. Also, this is a key to any hard baits you guys are throwing, I believe. If you look at a treble hook, there's obviously 3 prongs. And one is soldered on one side, and then there will be 2 on another. I always stagger them, whether it's a jerkbait, crankbait, topwater. So one prong is going to be on this side, 2 on this side, and then you go to this side, and there's going to be 2 on that side and 1 on that side. Not to try to lose you, but you're just going to make them go in reverse. That way, when a fish comes up and punches this thing, if they're both on one side, they're going to off counter and they're going to swing one direction. You have a good chance at missing them. So now when this thing gets punched, when a fish eats it, no matter what, a hook's swinging right in his face. And that's better for me. And again, that works with topwaters, jerkbaits, crankbaits, any kind of reaction bait. Just something to keep in
When they
mind.
come out of the package, they all go in one direction?
Yeah, most of the time.
So you're switching them off and changing them around?
Switching them off, I'll always offset one.
Makes sense.
So when they hit it,
Hit left,
one's
hit
coming
right,
at it.
Yeah.
I've heard guys saying they tee their crankbait hooks.
Uh-huh.
Is that what that is?
Yes.
You're talking about?
Yep, that's it. And I don't know if this matters. I always put a red one up front, and that's just going to target that fish and maybe eat in the front one, and if it misses it, gets hooked in the back. So That's something I like to do with any hard baits. Another thing is, not to overwhelm you, this is a killer, and again, if Chuck didn't bring me down here, I wouldn't have showed you guys this. But how many people here have thrown a fish head spin for spotted bass? How many guys have actually caught them on it? A couple guys? How many times you, and largemouth, exactly. How many times you reel that thing and it's just bumping along? Because when I first started throwing it, I said, this thing's a piece of, you know what? I'm throwing it around and it's just bump, bump, I'm getting bit. I never hooked them. And then very rarely did I actually hook one. A tip I learned when I lost that Forcewood Cup throwing the crosstail shad, the guy who beat me was catching them all in a fish head spin, but he never caught one on this hook up here. Most of the time, 90% of the time, spotted bass, smallmouth, and largemouth will actually bite the blade. Okay, so you're going to be reeling along, and you're going to feel tink, 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 tink. Well, you could throw this right now for a spotted bass and rig like this with this little hook on the blade, and you'll catch every single one. And this thing is absolutely dynamite.
You see that?
Dynamite. So,
Pass that around.
yeah, pass it around. I passed that around one time, and it never came back to me.
They may not make it back there, man.
That thing, again, it's a trick I learned from back there, and I don't care what time of the year it is, you can throw it, and that thing will get so many bites, and it's mostly, you know, it is a largemouth thing, a smallmouth thing, but the spotted bass cannot resist it, and they always bite the blade.
What hook do you use?
I use a Gamakatsu straight shank light wire #1. And you put it on the concave side of the blade. You're putting it right on the split ring that comes on the blade. You're just putting it right on. It doesn't ever hit the bait. It goes through the water, and you'll be reeling it. I prefer a crankbait rod, really important, with 8 to 10 pound test fluorocarbon. I know some guys at Gamma that can hook you up. But you'll be throwing that thing, and just all of a sudden, ding, and it'll load up. And you don't really want to set, you just kind of want to hook them. And it's like, I fished a tournament earlier this year in Orville, and it was like every cast. It was stupid. I was just laughing like a little kid. Like every single time, it was every cast. My guy's going, what are you doing? And he started throwing one and nothing, because they were biting the blade. So that's a killer technique.
What's the name of the bait?
That's a fish head spin made by Swarmin' Hornet. I prefer a Kitech, a little Kitech trailer, little swim bait, and it's money for sure. I showed that to Scott Green. I know you guys know Scott Green. A couple of years ago.
Green Unlimited?
Yeah, him and Adam Perry out here, and I know it works here for sure with big ones. Another thing too is the same type of bait. Anyone here have thrown or heard of spy baiting? Oh, sorry. Okay, we won't talk about that. Real quick, the spy bait, I had this about 6 years ago. It's been in Japan forever. It's like a new concept now because it came to America. But if you look at things in Japan,
It's just a devil horse, that's all it is.
yeah, it's a devil horse. Instead of floating, it sinks.
No, they float.
It's a killer deal. I've caught tons of big bass. It's another little deal. It's just a little, you can slowly reel it, goes through the water column, blades on each side, they spin. When you drop it, they go down head first. It's a great thing for suspended fish. You can yo-yo it right through them. Gonna catch a ton of bass on it. I won't say any more because
What's the sink rate on that?
it's pretty slow. It's I bet, you know, I mean, you just going like this and it probably swims down like that.
Are you jerking it or just ripped?
I'll always throw it out there and count it down. You know, if I see them and they're down 15 feet, count it down and then just slowly sink it, and then I'll just kind of rip it up and just let it go back down on its own, because they'll sink down nose first. So you'll see them in the bait, and they shimmy down. They're awesome. That's one from Jackal that it will never make it to America probably, but it's the best one. It's an unbelievable bait.
Can you get it JDM? Can you get it in
Mhm.
eyes or anything like that?
Yeah, yeah. Then I'll do. It's funny. A guy who used to work for us had that bait. We had him, and he was crushing them. And then he went to Dual the Rios or whatever, and they started making them. And now it's like they came out with it, but that thing's been around for a long time, and it's awesome.
So you're saying Jackal made it before you?
Yeah, they made it about 6 years ago, and I've been fishing them since then, and never.
Have you found anything in terms of catching bigger fish versus just rats?
I have. I caught an 8-pounder at Orville 2 years ago. Big giant. It's just great when I use it as a cleanup bait. And what I mean by cleanup bait is you throw top water, you throw a jerk bait, your swim bait, something you're going to catch giant fish where they're bigger fish, but you know there's fish still there, you can see them. That's when you throw that thing and you pick every single one off the point. You know, when most guys are going to leave, you throw a jerk bait, blah, 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 you catch 2 or 3 and you go, okay, they shut down, they leave. That's when you pick that up and you'll catch 3 times more than you thought was there. So I use it as a cleanup bait and it works great.
Is the blade and the swim bait separate? You buy them separate, or are they rigged?
Oh yes, on the fish head spin.
Yeah.
That's a company in Georgia. It's called a Swarm and Hornet, and they come together. The blade and swim bait come together. They just don't come with the little hook on the blade.
I like the spit. I like the blade runners myself.
Yeah, those work great too. Same thing.
Can I see that?
Sure, yeah.
So you put the hook on the blade?
I put a hook on the blade. I'll show you when it comes back around, but I put a hook on the blade. One more thing I want to talk to you guys about, and then there'll be it, is a thing that's been around forever. It's probably not a secret really anymore, but we call it the Nico rig, the nail weight rig. It's a great reservoir fishery. This has been a key to me in catching a ton of limits, and it's a real basic setup. Again, it came from Japan, and it takes a worm, Cinco, whatever your favorite soft plastic is, a nail weight, which you've all seen the nail weights and wonder why the heck do they sell nail weights? You know, because you never use them on a fluke. But you'll put the nail weight right in the head of this thing, and put it just like that. You're going to take a hook, whatever hook you prefer. This is a weedless hook, and I put a little straw on here. So if I'm using a Cinco, I'll get like those O-rings you can buy at a store. I'm pretty cheap, so I'll go to this drink fountain right here. I'll buy a clear straw, and I'll mix it and match it so it blends in with the color. And what this straw is going to do is these river to sea or whatever nail weights you prefer, they get expensive after a while. They're tungsten, so they're like $6 for one of them. No, really like 8 of them, but. And so I'll save the worm. Anyways, I'm going to cut this down 1/4 inch long. I'm going to slide it on that worm just like this, right in the egg sac. I'm going to take the hook. I'm going to go through the little straw right like that, and I'm going to throw it out, and it's going to have a wacky rig action. It's going to be really cool. Gets a ton of bites and catches huge fish. Now when a fish bites it, because I have that straw in there, just imagine this hook's going to come out just like this, and this thing's going to slide up the line. So you're going to save this bait. You can catch multiple fish on it. Compared to if you didn't put an O-ring on there, every single time you catch a fish, the thing's going to slap off and it's going to throw and you're going to lose a ton of fish. So this is another thing to keep in mind that is going to work for you guys, I promise you. It's called a Nico rig, or it's just a wacky rig with a nail weight. So if anyone wants to see it.
And real quick,
Yes.
the O-ring or the straw, it doesn't matter. They both do the same thing.
Both do the same. The O-rings are hard to find for worms. Like this is a Zoom trick worm, and they're really hard to find one that fits snug. Because if it fits loose, you're going to throw it off. You know, like the Cinco, they have a perfectly sized O-ring on there. Those things are literally, you know, $15 for like 100 of them. Where a straw is completely free and they'll fit a worm better, like if you're throwing a Zoom or a rub worm. It's just going to save you a lot of baits. But it's a cool technique. I appreciate you guys having me. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. Yep.
So I just had a question. I mean, because obviously we do a lot of time to pre-fish. You can nail down, are they biting the underspin, are they biting the pipe, are they biting the spin bait, are they biting the drop shot, whatever. Oftentimes I'm going to a club tournament having not pre-fished.
Yeah.
So like, how do you approach your day when you've got 6 or 8 baits and you're hoping to catch them on? If you think they're on these 3 points,
Yeah.
is there, I mean, it's almost pre-fishing as a tournament.
Yeah, definitely. You know, the first thing I do is obviously time of the year, you know, previous history, what works on that lake. You know, like if you know they're eating a jerkbait, you're going to definitely have the underspin on and that spy bait. If they're not, they're on the bottom and it's cranking, then I won't have that stuff. But little things like if you go out in a tournament and you throw a jerkbait, you just happen to catch one, you go, oh, okay, lights will go off my head, like they're suspended.
Try these 3 baits.
Now I can try those, yeah. And if I don't catch them on that, then I'm not going to keep trying it. So whatever you have confidence in, you go out there, like you said, oh, they're eating a swim bait and that thing was suspended, then you can start expanding from there.
And then watching your graph too, where you're seeing fish. You're seeing them on the bottom or seeing them suspended.
Yes, watching your graph on these reservoirs is huge. It's a super extreme key. Yeah. And yeah, key with me when your line starts spinning like that, you know, fluorocarbon can be stretched out really good, and it has memory in it. So when you stretch it out, it'll be like new. You know, a lot of times, high dollar fluorocarbon, you could have it on your rod, you can fish it all day, and then if it's spinning like that, you could drag it behind the boat and stretch it. What I like to do is tie it to a tree or something and pull it, and it'll be like brand new tomorrow.
My trailer head.
Yeah, exactly. You hook your partner in the head with it, make them run. Anyway, do it. So, thank you guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.